Cities are living organisms with heads, hearts, and eyes. The soul of Austin is considered by most to be Barton Springs. Its water, sacred. Its necessity to humanity, ancient. Its value to Austin, immeasurable. But for a soul to endure, it must have a voice. The soul of Austin has provided solace, recreation, and peace to so many for so long that many of its voices are no longer with us. For the next 30 minutes, help us celebrate the way Barton Springs has touched the citizens of Austin, and through this celebration, realize the importance of preserving this body of water for the generations to come.
My first remembrance of Barton Springs is in 1952 when I first came here. I was a freshman at UT on the swimming team, and the other swimming team members came out here with me and ran down the hill, and I jumped in the pool and they didn't, and I got the shock of my life.
When I was on the Little League team, my dad had an inner tube that he got from a B-52 bomber. And that was a big inner tube. It'd get as big as you wanted when you put air in it. And the only place that would allow us to bring that in, the only pool, is Barton Springs. So we'd bring the big old inner tube here to Barton Springs and roll it in. It'd be about 8 feet tall. And we put it in deep water, and all the Little League team would get on and play king of the water on the inner tube. And the king of the inner tube, and we'd bounce around on it. And it was a blast. We'd spend all day here, have a picnic, and just live in the springs. We did that almost every Saturday throughout the summer, and it was a lot of good times.
My first time here, I came with my mom, my sister, and my grandmother, who was about 78 years old. We were about halfway down the steps, and I'm holding her hand, and I'm just in awe of Barton Springs and how beautiful it is. And all of a sudden I look down, and there's this huge snake, and it's going across the step. And my grandmother is she was so wonderful, and she looked at me and I looked at her, and I was freaked to the nines, and she said, "Just step over it." And the snake slithered down the steps and into Barton Springs, but then out into the creek. So, I was a little afraid to go in, but I still went in, and it was wonderful, and I'll never forget it.
The pastime for Austinites was come out here in the evening after most swimmers had left, and they'd buy popcorn and they'd walk around the pool, because then you could have access to anywhere in the park. You didn't have fences up. And they'd feed the fish, and you had big, monstrous catfish, and you had big carp, and you had big eel, and you had perch, and you had all kind of wild fish life in the pond, in the pool, and they'd come out at night and feed them.
When I was a child, when we'd swim in the deep water, we'd always watch for the fish. We'd put our goggles on, and there was usually some fish, some perch, and some other fish in the deep water, and we would try to catch them, chase them as we dive underwater, but we never could catch them. They were a little too fast for us.
And I also remember jumping off the high board when there was a high board, and walking out to the end of the high board and looking around and saying, "Okay, world, goodbye." And then I'd jump off. It's very scary and I go all the way down. But I survived, obviously, and did it again and again, and it was a lot of fun to do that.
I was sitting up watching my children. I was sitting on the wall behind the diving board, and suddenly I realized that I could only see 3 of my children. I said, "Where's David? Where's David?" And I looked, and this was in the days when there was still a high diving board on down the sidewalk a ways. And I looked just in time to see this little bitty fella climbing to the top of the high diving board ladder. And man, I took off running, and the lifeguards were whistling, "No running, no running." And I said, "Yeah, right. I am going to get my 3-year-old. And he just walked out to the end of the diving board and jumped off. And I was going, David. And I got to the diving board, and he pops up in the water, and he goes, "What? What's the deal here?" And he 3 years old, and he paddled on over. I jumped into the water, and he was just fine. He's been taking chances ever since.
One of the things that I get a great deal of pleasure out of is the fact that my two kids, who are now grown and live in other places, they also developed a love for swimming at Barton Springs. And it's a tremendous pleasure now as adults when I go down to Barton Springs, and just if they're in town visiting, there's a good chance that I'm going to run into them down there, especially during the free swim at night.
I have so many memories here because when I was little, I started coming here when I was about a month old. And I used to, run around and play with my friends and just play all around in the grass and catch fireflies at night. And, I'd go to these diving contests, and we'd always sit on the hill and just watch everyone dive. And those diving championships are absolutely amazing.
We came here a lot. A friend of mine, Jerry Milan, and I came out here a lot for promotion of the Aqua Carnival, which at that time was the only way the swimming team had of making money. We were the only guys that operated in the red, except for the football team. Football team supported everybody else, and the swimming team went on its own because of the Aqua Carnival. We dressed in clown suits and so forth and dive off of the pool of the board here, which was a rotten board, by the way. But we did way out layouts and things like that, half goners, and jackknife half twist, jackknife full twist, back flop, rear entrance with one eye closed, which was a real dive. You just jackknife and half twist and jackknife full twist, back flop, rear entrance with one eye closed, and you holler that all the way down. Anyhow, we had a big crowd usually, and we would promote the Aqua Carnival and tell everybody to come. We charged, I've forgotten now, but about $5 a ticket, I think, which was a pile of money back then. But we had sold out people, coming in. It was just packed for three days in a row. And we had the Aqua Carnival Queen. We had the contest for her, and that brought in a lot of people, especially the frat boys came to see that.
Well, Dad, he swam anytime that the sun would shine. He'd come to boat, come to water, swim. Wintertime or summertime, if the sun would shine, he'd come to me. And he'd jump in right there, and then he'd jump in and he'd swim down, and then he'd come walk back and sit down in the sunshine and dry off real good and everything, then he'd walk in.
Going back beyond my time, when my mother was here, she remembers, and my father came to Austin when he hitchhiked to Austin after he got out of the Navy in World War II. There used to be an old building here near the springs, a two-story open-air building, and on the second story, they'd have dances on Saturday night, and people would go up there and dance, and then when they have a break, a lot of them would go down, change into the swim trunks, and go dive into the pool to cool off. The hall wasn't air conditioned, and that was a way to cool off when they had breaks during the dances. So people would come here, and that was back in the 40s, I believe, or maybe the 1930s and 40s. And so this is very much a recreational area, even back then.
An old two-story wooden bathhouse where you had the downstairs was for a major area for dressing for the men and a major area for dressing for the women. And upstairs was a big dance hall, a big open pavilion where you had dances many times a week. And on the 4th of July above there, you always had the big 4th of July celebration where crowds would gather all throughout the park, and they'd have a rodeo, and they'd have a carnival, and they'd have all kind of events, and closed out on July the 4th by a big celebration by fireworks on the south side of the pool. But that was kind of the focal point for the park, and it was there before they built the lower dam.
Barton Springs was an integral part of coming to school here, and it was way out in the country in '52. We're talking about none of these, Chewy's and all that, those places. None of those were here. You were out in the country, boy. This was it. You came out here and went swimming.
It was when the first topless women started showing up in the '70s. It was quite a scandal. But again, it was a funny time because you'd have the sorority girls, you'd have the hippie girls, and you never knew who it was. But that was quite the controversy for a while. And it just kind of faded. It faded as a sign of the times.
We used to come out here a lot during the summertime as a family. And we would have our picnic, and then my two brothers and my sister and I would scrounge around for tickets because we wanted to go swimming, but we didn't have enough money to go swimming all the time. But we didn't feel like we wanted to get caught in the swimming pool without a ticket, so we would walk around, and if we found a ticket, we'd go, "Oh, I found my ticket, I can go swimming." Because they used to have little paper tickets where, they'd give the people when they paid.
We used to just routinely climb over the back fence back here and sneak in. So we were always, it was like a cat and mouse game, and got to know the regulars that would do it, and you would see them in the pool and you'd immediately know that they'd snuck in. But if we couldn't catch them doing it, I don't know if we stamped hands back then or not. I usually would just let them go ahead and stay in and say, "All right, you got me this time."
After the war, they built the current bathhouse, and that's been there since then. Of course, back in those days, you actually used the dressing areas that are no longer used for that purpose now. We'd have as many as 5,000 baskets at a time on the men's side, and probably 2,000 baskets on the ladies' side where people were dressing and undressing. Because you didn't go to the swimming pool with your bathing suit on then. You went to the swimming pool, dressed, changed, put on your bathing suit, you got through, you dressed, and went home. So it's a total different lifestyle from what we have today.
This was the place to come back then. They didn't have this huge edifice to undress in. They had small little Quonset hut type things initially. That's what I recall. And it was a neat place. And I came and brought a lot of freshmen down. Anyhow, that was probably the best fun I had in college. Think back of that.
We have also had in our family a little kind of personal family history that we always baptize our babies with a kind of secular baptism in Barton Springs. So I have 8 grandchildren, and we have brought them all to Barton Springs to have that sacred water put on their heads. Now, they didn't much like it when they were really little, and it's crying, but it's important, we think. This is where you need to know. These are the roots that you have in this family, and you need to know about Barton's. So that's always a little family ritual that we do.
In 1928, they built the lower dam, and that's the first time they were able to dam up the water in the pool. Up until that time, they always stacked rocks at the lower end of the pool, just above the springs that come out from the side, and they were able to raise the elevation of the water that way. As a matter of fact, my father started out here as an employee of the city in 1928 doing that very thing.
I remember the events of the cleanings always seemed like a big deal. We had a fire hose that we had to man, and at the end of the night we'd get down here in the deep water, pull the fire hose, turn it on with the pressure, and 3 or 4 of us would be on the end of it, and it'd be whipping us around like a garden hose.
At 7:30 we would pull the gates up and the water would drain. We'd get a tractor and with a brush on attached to it, and then we'd sweep the bottom with the tractor, and they would spray the sides of the pool.
It was hard work. It really was. I mean, we were out here from the time we closed. I think we would close early. I don't know how they still do it. We would close on cleaning nights at like 7 or 7:30, and we'd be out here close to midnight finishing up. So it was a long day if you were on the cleaning crew, but it was fun.
The biggest disappointment, I guess, is just in, again, I understand the why it's there, but the way the pool appears and the water looks, and a lot of that has to do with the way we used to clean it and keep the algae off the bottom. You know, it's slippery now.
I know that we kept the shallow end a lot cleaner than we keep it nowadays. We used to were allowed to put chlorine down there on the rocks, so those beautiful white rocks down there were just crystal clear. You could see where you were walking, you weren't slipping and falling. We didn't have the moss on the bottom, and I really miss that part of it. I think that's, you know, really beautiful, and I understand the reasons we had the problems with the chlorine.
I'm an advocate for the springs being kept clean. I think the unfortunate thing today is that we need to be controlling what flows into those aquifers more so than what we do on topically in this pool. And I think where we're really hurting those salamanders is what we pump into those aquifers. Because
of the various things that are going on in building and the spillovers into the springs, that's a huge concern.
I first noticed the muddiness of the pool after a short rain, a little rain. One morning early I came down and the pool was muddy. I got in just to see how deep I could see, and I couldn't see the length of my arm. It was so muddy. And that was after they started bombing and dynamiting, rather, for Barton Springs Mall. And we had heard the noises, the dynamiting going on there. But all of that, when it rained, then all of that loose soil came into the pool, and that's the first time I ever saw the pool messed up like that.
The springs are everybody's anyhow. They don't just belong to the environmentalists.
Yes, first flood I saw in 1935. We were living in the little rock house up by the playground, and water got 5 feet 8 inches in that house, which means it was almost up to the door. Normal door is 6 feet 8 inches, so it was a foot below the openings of the door. And after that, it almost got up on the old dance floor of the old bathhouse.
It was only one time that I was actually down there when I saw, you know, everybody had talked about a wall of water coming down the creek. And it's exactly what it was. I mean, it would build, it would build, it would build, and it would just come crashing over the dam. It's a pretty impressive sight.
Seeing the sidewalk just completely washed out and the rebar is sticking out and everything. And of course you couldn't go swimming then, but they wouldn't mind if you went swimming when it was still flowing really fast. So the water would be flowing really fast, and we would get in the shallow pool, the shallow part of the pool, and it would be slippery because of the algae and moss on the bottom. And you could go sliding down on your feet, go whee, until you got into the deep, and then of course you had to turn around and swim against the current, or take the current around, and then come back, and then you could get into the shallow part again and slide on down, either on your feet or on your rear end. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Typically has done a lot of damage and torn up the diving boards and much of the grassy area, but Barton Springs they always rebuild. They still get on average of a couple floods a year that come through the pool and do some damage, but they know how to repair and get going very quickly.
It used to be that any time it rained, the water that came down the creek flowed through the pool. There was not a bypass. And in 1973 or 4, when I was director, we built the bypass underneath the north sidewalk so that we could block off that water coming from above the upper dam, so that it would not come through the pool. Now on a major flood, it's going to come over. But that didn't bother us as much. But it was that follow-up, the drain-off, that continued to bother us for as long as 2 or 3 weeks. And so by letting the major floods come in and then diverting the runoff after that underneath the sidewalk, we were able to open the pool much sooner.
And then you'd sit back and you'd cross your fingers that the damage wasn't too bad. Sometimes it was a week before the floodwaters stopped.
I remember one morning we had flood. It had been raining all night long, and I was on duty and came down here, and it was beginning to rise, and we got word that it was going to come over the spillway down there at the end of the dam. I was cleaning off, getting the chairs out of that one, and I looked, and I saw a crest of water coming over the spillway down there, and I'm sure my memory, and I've exaggerated it some in my mind, but it seemed like it was like an 8 or 10 foot wall of water just coming down the creek bed this way, and I knew that if I didn't get across then, I wasn't going to get back across, and so I hooked them and ran all the way across this end down here to beat it so that I wouldn't get stuck up there on the hill away from the office. And then we went up in the office all day long and watched the water rise up slowly up the hill. It didn't make it up, but maybe halfway up to where that tree is up there, halfway between here and the office, but it was quite a scene. One of the arguments that we always try to make is that it's an economic asset. It's as important to our economy as a new highway, as the new airport, as a new shopping mall. It is one of the things that makes our region economically competitive. And we will remain an attractive place as long as we can preserve beautiful places like Barton Springs.
Kind of, the 2 to 10 shift we watched as we were younger. We watched on the hill across the pool, different families come in the evening, play on the hill, run and chase fireflies, and come screaming down the hill and jump into the water. And I always thought that was so cool because we watched these kids from younger than this age up to now they're in college. So we kind of watched them grow up. And as we were guarding and we'd see these families, I think both of us kind of thought that would be what a neat way to spend an evening with your family, or what a neat way to grow up. Summer nights catching fireflies and little toads, and just spend it at the pool. Summer in Austin, Texas. Why be anywhere else?
I've sampled all the communities of life here and find different, it's been 23 years, I still find different groups of people. And this pool represents the ebb and flow of old friendships, people that I'll run into here after years, and then there's the opportunity to meet new people here. And this atmosphere is so natural that we're all very authentic. It's not anything like a cocktail party. It's a much better place to meet people.
Everybody swam out there was a booster, So this pool has had a lot of people that have taken it under their belt, to boost the bring of it.
I mean, we had doctors, we had lawyers, we had students, we had bums, and they'd come in to the pool, they'd take their clothes off, and everybody was the same.
It makes me feel good when I come. I can be kind of draggy coming down, but always when I leave, I have a peppy step. It's an addiction. I don't feel as good if I don't swim. It's, I think it's kept me going all my years. I'm 84.
I've heard it described as the 8th wonder of the world, and I would have laughed at that, except that when I lived in Europe, I began to believe it when I missed it so much.
It's an amazing place. It's a very artistic place, a place that I'll enjoy all my life.
Being a native Austinite, Austin's been very much a part of my life, and Zilker Park and Barton Springs have been the most important part of it. I grew up here as a child. I learned to swim in the swimming pool when I was 2 years old. I served as a locker boy, I served as a cashier, I served as a lifeguard, I served as a pool manager the 4 years I was in college.
I made a beeline from Marble Falls to Austin, Texas. I knew that I wanted to live here close to Barton Springs. I knew that I needed the really cold water. I'm a hot-headed person emotionally, and this water is just the most healing, soothing for me. It's medicine.
It's something that should be cherished by all citizens of Austin, and it is. It is. It's just one of those unique places in all of the world that people can come to and just enjoy.
One thing about this water, you get in, it's cold, then it's refreshing, and it stays with you all night, so you feel good all night.
And you know, I never ever found another place in the world that I would say beats Barton Springs for a good, cool swim.
I was just reading in the paper this morning about this young Mexican actor who had never been to Austin before, now in here filming some type of film, and he said, I've never been here before, but I understand why people want to live here. And I think that's a great statement for Austin. And that's a statement that's been here forever. And that has been a feeling about Austin forever. We need to keep it that way.
First thing that anybody should do when they come to Austin is get in that water. This is Austin, you know. If you leave here in 5 years, 10 years, and you said you've never been in Barton Springs Pool, you've never been in Austin.